In this video, we are going to talk about making a virtual three-way switch or a virtual three-way circuit using SmartThings and Z-Wave direct association. Before we get into those things, though, let's define a few terms and make sure we are all on the same page. So in the US, a three-way switch or a three-way circuit is a single load, which is often a light or a group of lights, controlled by two different switches. Some of the principles that we're going to be talking about today with the Z-Wave direct association can be used with four-way or even five-way circuits or switches as well, but we're specifically going to be talking about a virtual three-way because some of the wiring that we're going to talk about and some of the alternatives would work with three-way and not with four-way or five-way. In a typical three-way circuit, you have what are called traveler wires, and those wires run between the two switch boxes so that the circuit can be broken or turned off by either one of those switches. If you have an existing three-way circuit that's working properly and you just want to make that be smart home controlled, it's typically better to replace that with a smart switch and then a companion switch that is sold with those smart switches. And then you can actually use those existing traveler wires that you already have running through the wall to make your three-way circuit and to have that be smart home controlled without having to go through some of the extra complexity that we're going to talk about today. I have another video that actually discusses how to do a four-way circuit using some GE Z-Wave switches that I like to use and those companion dimmers. So that's probably the way to go if you have an existing three-way circuit and you've already got those wires in place. A virtual three-way, though, is something you can use when you don't already have those wires run through the wall or through the ceiling and you don't necessarily want to have to run them. So a common use case for that would be if you have an existing light that's just controlled by a single switch and you decide, hey, I'd really like to make this a three-way circuit, put another switch by the back door so I can turn the lights on when I come in. And, a lot of the smart home stuff that I do is already wireless, so why would I have to run wires to do this? A virtual three-way switch is a great candidate for that application. So we discussed that a virtual three-way switch is a three-way switch in which we do not actually have traveler wires run through the wall for the switches to communicate. Now, there's multiple different ways we could accomplish something that would fall under the virtual three-way switch umbrella. One of the ways that can be done, and this is actually what I'm replacing in the project that is the impetus for this video, is to use a proprietary wireless technology. So what I'm replacing is this Lutron Maestro set. This is older. I did this several years ago, and there's a regular dimmer that just replaces a dimmer in the wall, and then this uses radio communication to communicate with that master dimmer. Huge advantage here is this just fits in a Decora faceplate and it's battery powered, so there's no wiring or anything that needs to be done, and it could just be put in a naked Decora faceplate in the wall without even a box behind it, and it looks, fairly similar to a normal light switch. The downside, especially with this particular line, is there's no smart home integration at all. So that's actually why I'm replacing it, because I want to be able to control those lights with my smart home devices. I know Lutron does make some stuff now that does integrate with smart home devices. I haven't used any of that gear, though. So that's one option, is just to buy something that has, pre-configured wireless capabilities out of the box. Another way to do that is to use some functionality in your smart home hub to make a virtual three-way circuit. So like one example in SmartThings is with the smart home lighting automation, I think is the current name for it. There's a really easy to configure functionality where you can say mirror this switch. So you could set the two switches up and just say, hey, have switch A mirror switch B, and it'll work with on, off, and dimming. The couple of downsides there, though, are the response can be pretty slow. I actually did that today just as a test with a couple of my switches, and I was getting somewhere between like 3 and 5 seconds delay, which for turning on and off is annoying. For dimming is really kind of crippling. For the geek in the house who's actually configuring all the smart home stuff, may be willing to live with that, but your spouse or family members, are just going to be confused when light switches don't work and work instantly. So I have not seen a solution there that works well, at least not with SmartThings. I've tried some stuff with WebCore as well, and have had the same challenges there. So your mileage may vary. Maybe your experience will be better than mine, but I kind of ruled that out as a possibility for the lag, and also the used to be difficulty of configuring, although the mirror this switch in the smart home lighting is actually super easy to do. It just doesn't work super well in my opinion. So then the other option, and what we're actually going to be looking at today, is Z-Wave association groups. So the huge advantage here is you can configure the Z-Wave switches to use what's called an association group to send commands through the Z-Wave mesh network directly to another switch, or I guess it's not directly if it's through the mesh network, but what I mean by that is it doesn't go through the hub, right? So you could unplug your SmartThings or whatever other home hub you're using, and the Z-Wave mesh network would still work. The switches would still relay the message to the appropriate switch, and this happens nearly instantaneously, and it doesn't require an internet connection, and it doesn't require your smart hub to on. So a lot more stable, and you get rid of that pesky lag time that other people in your house may not be willing to endure. For this video, we are going to be using the GE Z-Wave Plus line of switches and dimmers. You can certainly do the same setup with other manufacturers' gear, but it's important that you make sure that whatever you buy supports Z-Wave association groups if you're going to use this method. Not all Z-Wave equipment does. And also, if it does support Z-Wave association groups, it may not be the same association group number that I am using. It's become much more standardized since the introduction of the Z-Wave Plus standard, but it's still not completely standard across the board, so you should definitely look up the specifications for whatever you're going to buy. If you happen to buy the GE line stuff, you want to make sure you get the one that does say Z-Wave Plus on the box, and that the model number begins with 14, so it's a 14,000 series. The older 12,000 series are great switches. I have them all over my house, but they do not support Z-Wave association groups, so won't work with this method. I'll show you my demo setup for this video. Before I do that, let me go ahead and tell you, yes, I realize this is not particularly safe. No, I am not recommending that you recreate this demo setup. I just wanted to make it obvious that there is no cheating or anything going on behind the scenes here. So I have a GE Z-Wave dimmer here. I just connected with a piece of Romex to this outlet that you see in the background just to get power to the switch. And if you look at the back of the switch, you can see that there's nothing connected to the load terminal. So we have line and neutral connected, but load you will see is empty. So this switch is not electrically controlling anything. Anything you see it doing will be via Z-Wave only. Up here in the background is the switch that controls my bedside lamp. So if I turn that off, you'll see it get darker. And over here, my lamp you'll see is off. And I will turn that same switch back on. You'll see the lamp come on. So we are going to make this demo switch that doesn't have anything connected to its load terminal and is just plugged into the wall control this Z-Wave switch by Z-Wave association groups so that we can use this to turn my bedside lamp on and off. The way we are going to configure our demo rig to control the switch that my table lamp is plugged into is to use something called a device type handler or a device handler. What a device handler is basically a configuration profile that tells SmartThings what the capabilities of the device you configure are, which then allows you to use SmartThings to control those capabilities. There are a lot of generic device handlers like dimmer or switch that allow SmartThings to use those common capabilities with a variety of devices. There are also specific device handlers for specific devices that may have extra capabilities or something that is a little out of the ordinary. And then there's also this IDE and capability that SmartThings provides to do some customizations. So there are developers in the community who will provide custom device handlers that in some cases add additional functionality that your hardware devices may be capable of supporting that the native device handlers are not. Or in cases like this, there are device handlers that perform a specific function for configuring a physical device. You wouldn't necessarily use that device handler in normal operation of the device, but it can be really useful to set something up like Z-Wave association groups. So there's a developer whose handle is Codersaur, who has produced a device handler that is called Z-Wave Tweaker, that, as you would expect from the name of the tool, allows us to tweak Z-Wave settings on our devices. So we're going to walk through very briefly the process of installing Z-Wave Tweaker so that we can use that. The first thing you'll need to do is to go to graph.api.smartthings.com. I'll put a link to that in the description of the video. This is the SmartThings IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment, and this allows you to customize a good deal of things about your SmartThings deployment. So you'll go here, you're going to sign in using either your Samsung credentials or your SmartThings credentials, depending on which of those is appropriate for your deployment. And then, once you're signed in, you're going to go here to My Device Handlers, and you're going to click Add One Now, or Create Device Handler. You're going to choose the From Code option. You're going to go to the code that Codersaur has provided for this device handler, and copy and paste the entire thing there into this box, and then click Create. Once this is done with the creation process, we are going to click the Publish button to publish it. That just exposes it to our actual SmartThings hub so that it can see it when it contacts SmartThings. Because we're not set up in this profile, and you probably won't be in yours either, to be a developer who's publishing things for other people to consume, your only option here is for me, and that's appropriate, what you want to choose here. Once that has happened successfully, you'll see this device type published successfully, and we can click Save, and then we are done. Now that we have configured our SmartThings IDE to use the Z-Wave Tweaker device type handler, we actually need to tell it that we want to use Z-Wave Tweaker with this particular switch. So we're going to go to the switches. Now, I'm not sure why the IDE is arranged this way. It makes sense to me to go to My Devices. However, you'll see if I go to My Devices, I don't actually have any devices. I actually have to go to My Location, and then I have a location named Home, and I have devices underneath that. So I guess in some cases you can associate devices directly with your SmartThings profile, and mine are associated with My Location instead. But just wanted to point that out because that confused me the first time I ever signed into this IDE. So here you can see all of the devices that I have, and you see here our device named Demo. So I'm going to go into the device named Demo, and then if you scroll down to the bottom, you can see an Edit button. And once I'm in Edit mode, then I see this option here that says Type. So you can see when I set the switch up in SmartThings, it defaulted to this device type handler called Dimmer Switch. And if I open this up and scroll all the way to the bottom where the custom ones are, I will see Z-Wave Tweaker. Or it might just be alphabetical and it starts with a Z, actually. I'm not sure. At any rate, Z-Wave Tweaker is at the bottom for me, so I choose that. And then I update. And now my device is configured to use the Z-Wave Tweaker device handler. Alright, and then there's one last thing we need from this IDE before we move on to the mobile device, and that is the device network ID for the switch that controls my lamp that we actually want to configure the demo switch to be able to control. Remember, I get to this list from going to My Locations and then choosing the devices from My Location. My switch for my table lamp is called Joe's Light. So if we scroll down here, we can see this device column, device ID column, and we can see that device ID 13 is the one that we need to configure. So we'll need that in a moment when we go to use Z-Wave Tweaker on the mobile device to configure the association groups.
Okay, so now we see in the SmartThings app on my mobile device that our switch named Demo no longer looks like a normal switch. We can see the wrench and screwdriver icon there, and it says Tweaker on the right. So we're going to go ahead and tap on that. That will bring us into here. Lots of really cool stuff you can do with Z-Wave Tweaker, but for what we're going to do now, we're just going to click the gear icon in the top right. And then we are going to scroll until we see Configure Association Group. And there are a couple of things that we need to do here. So first of all, with the device that we are using, we want to use Association Group 2. These particular devices use Association Group 1 for communication with the hub, in this case the SmartThings hub. Association Group 2 is used in conjunction with the normal operation of the switch and the local load, which we're not really going to use here, but that's the one that we want to use because it'll make the switch behave just like normal. And then Association Group 3 in these devices can be used for controlling an additional device from the switch using a double tap for on and off. But because we're configuring this as a dimmer, we just want it to act like normal. So we're going to use Association Group 2. So we are going to go ahead and set that. And then Association Group Members. So what this is asking is basically what other devices do you want me to send these commands to? And if you remember in the last segment, we looked at the device ID for my bedroom lamp, and it was device 13. So we are going to go ahead and put 13 in here. And that should be all that we need to do. So we are going to go ahead and hit save. And we should be all set as far as the mobile device is concerned.
Okay, and now that we have our demo rig set up to send the Z-Wave Association Group signals, we can go ahead and test this out. So I'm going to turn the lamp off, and I'll turn the lamp back on, and then we'll do dimming as well. Pressed that a little bit too soon last time after sending the off command. But you can see the dimming response is instantaneous, as is the on and off. And that's all there is to it here. So I mentioned earlier in the video that this same principle could be used for a 4-way or a 5-way switch. So what we did with this particular switch, you could follow those exact same steps for additional devices. Usually devices will have a limit for how many devices can be in an association group. So you might run into limits there, but other than that, you could just configure more and more devices to control the same load if you wanted to, and it's just as easy as making those simple tweaks. The one other thing that you'll want to do for just normal use is go back into the IDE after you've done this and change the device handler for this device before you install it. You'll want to change that back to whatever value it auto-detected or whatever device handler you want to use. So in this case, it'll be dimmer switch that we'll want to change that back to. A couple of quick notes about the actual installation. So now that we've gotten this device configured, you can think about where it is that you want to install this. So like I showed you earlier, there's nothing plugged into the load terminal, and you don't need to have anything plugged into the load terminal for this device, so that's fine. But you are still going to need 120 volts plugged into the line terminal, and you're going to need the neutral wire, just like you would for a normal installation of one of these dimmers, because you have to have power to the switch to run the actual Z-Wave electronics that are in here. So wherever your installation is going to be, if you have an existing electrical box that has another switch in it, that's going to be the easiest way to go. So usually when I do this, what I'll do is I'll take a single gang electrical box that has one switch in it. I will cut that box out of the wall and put in an old work box that's a double gang box, so I can put the two switches side by side, and then I've already got 120 volt power and neutral in that box from the existing switch, so I can just use a little pigtail and don't have any issues there. Same challenges exist with this if you have an older home that doesn't have neutral wires in the switch box. There's other articles and videos for how to overcome those limitations. Those same, this method doesn't get you out of any of those struggles. Or if you wanted to put a switch on the wall in a place where there aren't any existing switches at all, so you've got no power or no neutral wire there, then you'd have to either run wire if you were going to use this method, or you might want to look for a battery operated device instead. But in the case of hey, I want to make a virtual three-way circuit for one of my existing lights, and I've already got power and neutral, but I just need some way to control a light that's in a different place where I don't already have electrical connectivity. This method is great, super easy, and like I showed, the response is absolutely instantaneous. So really tough to well, better when you're not holding the switch upside down. Here we go. But the response is just instantaneous, and absolutely love that for being able to get a three-way circuit up and running without having to run wires through the wall. I hope this video was helpful for you. I love interacting with viewers in the comments, so by all means, if you have any questions, please feel free to post those below. I won't BS you if I don't know the answer. I'm happy just to tell you that, but happy to interact. And if you have any thoughts on other videos that you would like to see, please let me know that as well. I'm looking to start producing content a little more regularly, so would love to hear from you what you would like to see. Thanks for watching.